Welcome back, everyone. Time for session 2. Already briefly introduced myself earlier. So I work for the European Hematology Association. So I represent medical specialists in the HTA discussions. Ideally, we do that together with hematologists, and we are happy to have one on the panel in a bit. Maybe just a few brief words about why a medical society like EAA prioritizes being involved in discussions around the implementation of the HTA regulation. Our number one advocacy priority for many years has been improving affordable and equitable access to innovative therapies. And that is, of course, a very ambitious challenge shared by many. We have been prioritizing helping to build joint HTA in Europe because we believe that is particularly important for improving the information basis for access decisions. And we try what we can to make sure that clinicians are actively part of this EHA, but also in close collaboration with other medical societies and in very close collaboration with the patient organizations like Cancer Patients Europe. It is a true pleasure to be co-hosting this convention together with Antonella. We have been working together for many years on different dossiers. I think what we have in common is that we don't necessarily find it very easy always being part of discussions on HTA, as well as working with our teams on all the other pieces of EU legislation that are under development, that are being revised, that are being implemented. So when we talk about the interface of different pieces of EU legislation with the HTA regulation, and look forward to revision or updating of the HTA regulation in the near future, then that is something important to keep in mind, that for clinicians and patients and their representatives to be involved in all this through their associations. It is a pretty daunting task, especially when there is so much happening all at the same time right now. So I'm very pleased to welcome a number of great panelists. The first of them will be Willemsen, who has an enormous amount of HTA experience. Anne, welcome. I know that you have been involved from the early UNETA days. You are currently you are based at the Dutch Healthcare Institute, SIN. And you are co-chair of the JCA subgroup. I'm happy to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and please accept my apologies that I couldn't be there in person with you, but I'm very pleased I can join virtually, and I hope to give you some further insights into where we are at the moment for the JCAs of medicinal products and some of the lessons learned. I hope you all will appreciate it. I can't go into too many details because the majority, or actually all, I must say, of the JCAs are still in progress. So it is very difficult for me to give a lot of detail on how these procedures are going and some of the learnings we've made there. But I'll try to be as detailed as I can. So if I can have the next slide, please. And I realized that as of yesterday, there is a new list of ongoing JCAs published. So my slide is outdated. So apologies for that. But it means that we now have 2 more JCAs initiated. I can't update the rest of the numbers by heart. But until January, we had 14 initiated. And I thought it was good to see that about half actually is an orphan designation. So even though we started with oncology products and ATMPs, we have a lot of orphan drugs in the field yet. And I think that that's quite natural to the field we started with, and we could have expected it, but I'm raising it here because we very often get questions how we believe the JCA might work for orphan drugs. So I think we will have experience on that quite soon as well. So for those 14 products, we see 15 different member states that took assessor and co-assessor role, and in total it's 17 different HTA bodies. And with the 2 new JCAs that were initiated, there are no changes to those numbers. So on the figure to the right, I also tried to map which member states that is and how often they took assessor and co-assessor roles. And I want to point out that Austria and Sweden, they have different bodies involved for the JCA work. So that's where we see that doubling coming in. As expected, I think Germany takes quite a high amount of JCAs, so they started quite a few, but we see that other member states also take multiple roles. So they are really trying to do JCAs in parallel and see when they can take up another JCA, because let's face it, it is a lot of work for all actors involved. So I'm very happy with the amount of member states we have involved. It's also growing. We see also some smaller HTA agencies coming on board. So I think this really is a good sign that we are building capacity to be ready for the high amount of JCAs we are expecting. So in terms of the status of the production, that's where I can't really be too detailed, but I think it's known to all of you, we are expecting the first JCA finalization very soon. And I think that's the time point all of us are looking forward to see what it really encompasses, such a JCA and the corresponding dossier. How many picos are there? And then, of course, also finally to see how that JCA then will be used. And I think that part may take a bit of time. And here I'm also making a plea to the HD and actually all HTDs. Whenever you have a product in for a JCA, I think the utilization of the JCA also is heavily linked to making timely national submissions for that product. So for the other assessments, I think about half is in the assessment phase, including then also the dossier confirmations, and the rest is awaiting the dossier. So the scoping phase is finalized, except for those 2 that were added yesterday. There, the scoping phase is ongoing. It was mentioned, I believe, in the previous panel about the discontinuation of one JCA, and as Valentina said, that was due to the fact the HTD withdraw their product from the EMA process, and as a result, we then, of course, cannot continue the JCA either. Which, of course, is a pity, but we understand anything can happen on that development stage. What I think also is good to see is that we, of course, had less JCAs than what we were expecting in 2025. I think that that's due to various reasons. And I think this may also not be completely as a surprise or something new necessarily. But we did see there was a bit of an increase throughout 2025. So I think that also shows there's a trend, more products are coming, and we already have a high amount of letters of intent received for 2026 and beyond. So I think that also is a good signal. We are increasing, and that also means we of course need to work on increasing the capacity, which comes back to the picture I had here on the right. Something I didn't put on this slide, apologies, I forgot, but we also have a very active group of patient experts and clinical experts who are involved in the JCAs. And those experts are identified and selected very early on. So with that, we're now also able to have early involvement of those experts, because I think that's where we would have most benefit and most impact when it comes to the assessment scope. So I think that is also a huge success, because it's a lot of work for the secretary to identify those experts, but I also really want to express my gratitude to those organizations involved in suggesting the experts that could take part, and of course for the experts to be involved, because it is very new, it's very technical, but it really is good to see so much interest and engagement. So if I can have the next slide, please. It's quite a lengthy slide, but I'll try to be brief, because I thought it would be good to focus on a few lessons learned so far. And I think the first one really is the importance of letters of intent, because timely submission of those and also updates when there are delays or changes to any content of it, that really is important for us to plan capacity, start already identifying those clinical experts and patient experts, and also to start the scoping work, although the latter is mostly linked to the timely submission of the clinical overview and the draft SMPC to us at the same time it is submitted to EMA. So what you can see here is that for the ongoing JCAs, and again, this is on the 14, and not necessarily on the new number, more than half were delayed compared to the planned submission date from the letter of intent. And that is quite impactful for us in terms of having assessor teams ready. Then I'm happy to report that we made changes to the format of the assessment scope explanation meeting based on feedback received. So I think it is more meaningful now. We also are presenting the general dossier expectations and procedural next steps. But I want to confirm that still it can't be used to discuss the appropriate methods for the dossier, nor will it lead to any changes to the PICO. So here also no changes will be made. Then for the general dossier expectations, we also learned some lessons here. So I think this is purely to reiterate what is important. And for us, it is really important that every part of the dossier template is filled in and nothing is left empty. And this also goes to the fact when an HTD believes there is no data for PICO, that should really be justified. And that justification then can be in the form of a systematic literature search, which is then properly reported. And that really is important also in the absence of evidence to show indeed there is then nothing. It is, of course, important to also read all of the adopted guidances. The methods subgroup also has been working on Q&A documents. I think they clarify a few additional aspects that are important to keep in mind, and I think they highlight also a few aspects that are really critical for the HTA work. And then to keep in mind as well that the deadlines for additional data requests are quite short, but we, of course, then do need those, so that's important to keep in mind. If I can have the next, and that's my last slide, I just want to highlight a few key takeaways that perhaps could also be helpful for the discussion later on. And I'm sure this came up in the previous panel as well. The marketing authorization procedure and the JCA run in parallel. But I really do want to stress it is separate procedures. So it is separate dossiers we are expecting, we have separate questions, and we have separate people involved. However, and it comes to my third bullet point, we do encourage the industry to have strong connections and communication between the different departments that are involved, because they are so much in parallel, and the timelines really overlap when it comes to crucial time points. And that means it is a high workload. So please prepare for that well in the time and ensure you have sufficient competences and resources available to also develop the HTA dossier in parallel to your EMA process. And I think those are the most important learnings we've made so far. I hope once we have more JCAs in the public domain, we can share more details. But as I mentioned, it is quite difficult at this stage to go into that. So I'm happy to take any questions, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I think we take the questions at the end. Can you stay until the end so that we can have a thorough discussion with the other panelists? So thank you for that. So just to summarize what you said very briefly, it's very important for us to see that a good number of member states are involved in the JCA and not only the usual suspects. It is also very positive to see that the number of JCA has slightly increased over time, so it means that the JCA process didn't scare everybody. It's also, we appreciate you acknowledging the efforts that healthcare professionals and the patients are making into the process. It's also important to prepare the letter of intent in properly and in advance, and it's important to fill in the dossier template in all the parts. But then here, I'm sure there will be discussions on the length of the dossier afterwards. You acknowledge the importance of the PICOs, and also that as a key learning, all stakeholders are learning as we go along into the implementation of the JCA.